We'll discuss some Inyane Rosh Hashanah, as Rosh Hashanah is 2 weeks away. So, we know the Torah describes the mitzvah of Shofar in 2 ways. In Parashas Emor, it's described as a Zichron Trua, and in Parashas Pinchas, it's Yom Trua. In fact, that's a whole discussion in terms of how many Shofar blasts do we have. So it starts off with, at least biblically speaking, at least 9, because it says Trua 3 times in the Torah, and we have a tradition before and after every Trua we have a Tekiah. So the definitely 9 Shofar blasts was the mitzvah min HaTorah. And then it went from 9 to 30. Why it went from 9 to 30 is a major machlokas rishonim with major nafkaminas. In other words, we went from 9 to 30, so the rishonim write because we moved to Gullus, and therefore we weren't exactly sure on what exactly was the Trua. So a Shvarim Trua, so we cover our angles, we go through all the possibilities of the blast, and if you do that, you come out with 30. So it went from 9 to 30, and later the minute developed into 100. But so let's say someone would only blow 9 shofar blasts today. There'd be a lot of happy people. Let's say you only would you get the mitzvah? So that's so according to what Rabbi Haigon learned, based on Rav Avo and the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, he seems to learn it was just done. Really, any of the truest sounds are fine. It's true in different minhagim and gullus, but ultimately any sound you do within reason, with close to those sounds, you're yotze. It's just to keep the uniformity. We want Klal Yisrael, even though it doesn't seem to work, but we want Klal Yisrael to do the same tekiah, so all over. So therefore we moved it to 30. So according to him, it seems to be 9 really is good, meikar hadin, except that just to keep the uniformity. However, the way the Rambam learns, the Masha from the Rambam, it's a real sveka daraisa, that we're not actually sure in terms of it's a real suffix. Really, apparently some of these sounds are the real, and some aren't. So it's Masha from the Rambam that you have to do 30, because if you only did, according to Rav Hai, when you did 9, you're probably yotze. Whether you're still yotze today is a separate question. Once the Chachamim tell you to do a certain amount of kolos, then we'll get into that shaila shortly. The same principle in another shaila, that perhaps, whether the Chachamim can okra that mitzvah, now that's a separate issue. But Pashas, according to Rav Hai, you fulfill your mitzvah min HaTorah, and according to the Rambam, you wouldn't. It'd be a suffix daraisa, and you have a suffix daraisa l'chumra, and therefore you'd have to blow 30. So, and then the minhag developed from 30 to 100, and different minhagim. When you blow it, some do it during the silent Shmon Esrei, others do it during the Chazaras Hashatz. Rav Soloveitchik,
sorry, we didn't explain how we get to 100. Like, what's the?
No, we didn't know. So then they did another 30 in terms of Chazaras Hashatz. They say Tosas writes in Rosh Hashanah, which is difficult also, but he says it's based on Aim Sisra. The mother of Sisra, right. She cried 100 times, like the way when a mother is waiting for us. And different Mefarshim, Tiku Kaf Gematria 100. Others say, also in this Chasidish Sfarim, the Akedas Yitzchak, they cried 100 times, or a woman at childbirth, different, but it's not really 100% clear how the number, it's clear that that's how they got to 100, when they went from 30 to 100, did it go from 30 to 60 first? That's not so clear in terms of the transformation. The bottom line we know is the minhag today is to blow 100, but I think everyone's mode, if you blow 30, you get your mitzvah min HaTorah. That's why it's very nogay at someone who's not in shul, and you have Rachmanis on the Baal Tekiah, or for women, even though she's exempt, but even if she's going to do the mitzvah, at least she only has to hear the 30 shofar blows. So I think we assume 30 is really the Yikar Adin. It's a pure minhag. Glama Toki, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, some we do to Ma'ariv the Satan. Different Gemaras, they quote different Tosas trying to explain why, how we get from, that's a discussion in the Rishonim, exactly why it's not Baal Tosef. If Minat Torah, let's assume, according to the Rambam, it's a suffix that writes, you need 30. What about more than 30? That's Tosas over there in Rosh Hashanah. Tosas writes that it's not Baal Tosef. The only time you violate Baal Tosef is if you change the mitzvah. You put 5 parashos in the tefillin, etc. You put 5 minim in the daled minim. But to do a mitzvah many times, that Tosas writes is not Baal Tosef. You could do the same mitzvah 100 times, he holds it's not Baal Tosef. The Rashba has a different answer. It's the Minchas Chinuch discusses whether there's actually a machlokas between the two, or they're just saying two different aspects. The Rashba says that you can't have Baal Tosef if it's something the Chachamim told you to do. That based on Mosasser, that any time if it's a mitzvah in the Chachamim, so by definition it's not Baal Tosef. So the Achronim discuss, maybe we'll go into it another time, the issue seems to be whether it's Baal Tosef if it did in the Chefsa or if it did in the Gavra. In terms of when you're changing the Chefsa, you change something from 4. According to Tosef, as long as you don't change the Chefsa Shel Mitzvah, it's not a problem about Tosef. In other words, you have 4 to 5 is a problem. If you're doing the same mitzvah many times, it's not a problem. And the Rashba, the Rashba has his own answer, and in terms of it has to do any time you have a mitzvah the Chacham, and by definition it can't be Baal Tosef. There's a whole discussion of Beis HaLevi. What about, they discuss about Tigra by not performing a mitzvah. So maybe that's the topic for another shiur. Maybe we'll go into another next week, maybe another time on the issue of Baal Tosef. But that's how they get to from 90 to 30 to 100 isn't so clear how, but what is clear, that is how a minute today that we bow 100 times. So the Torah describes it in 2 ways, as we said, Yom Trua and Zichron Trua. And in fact, this is this famous machloket Yerushalmi and Bavli we discussed a couple of years ago. What about Shabbos?
For blowing on Shabbos.
Yeah, for blowing it. But right, the Yerushalmi at the end of Rosh Hashanah, in terms of the Mishnah of Yontav, Rosh Hashanah falls to Shabbos. So the Mishnah says, "B'mikdash hayu token, aval lo b'medina." In the Mikdash they used to blow shofar. Machlokes Rashi, Rambam, what exactly is Mikdash?
Or not.
Rashi, has a much more. Rashi says literally Mikdash is Mikdash, and the Rambam holds Mikdash is the whole city of Yerushalayim. That's the Mikdash.
The Zakai extends it even further to any place.
Right. That's what we'll get into. Right, with the Rif. Right. So then, right. So they get in. So that's what we'll get into. Some rabbi, even about 150 years ago, we'll get to that. Wanted to blow shofar and Shabbos in Yerushalayim. Yeah, based on that.
The word Medina.
Right. So the Mikdash. So that's the Machlokes Rashi and the Rambam, and so. So the Gemara asks me, Nahani Mili, where do I know that blow Medina? Where does that come from? If in the Mikdash you blow shofar on Shabbos, why should I make a distinction between the Mikdash and the Medina? So actually the Havamin and the Bavli is the conclusion of the Yerushalmi. So I'll just call it the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says the Pshat is that's why we need the 2 psukim. The pasuk of Yom Trua is referring to when Rosh Hashanah falls out during the week. And Zichron Trua is referring to when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. And clearly it means when it's a Yom Trua when you blow shofar during the week. On Shabbos, but Medina, it's only a Zichron Trua. According to the Bavli, so according to the Yerushalmi, it is a biblical distinction. That Yom Trua is during the week. On Shabbos, according to the Yerushalmi, there is no mitzvah of blowing shofar on Shabbos. It doesn't exist. So how do you explain the Mikdash then? How come in the Mikdash there's a mitzvah in our Torah to blow shofar? According to Yerushalmi, there's nothing in the Medina? So that's what the Yerushalmi has a special limud. From the juxtaposition of the psukim, it says Yom Trua next to the Karbanos. So he has a drasha, but Makam Karbanos, i.e. the Beis HaMikdash, it's always a Yom Trua. So it's a special limit from the Yerushalmi, but the Yerushalmi makes a biblical distinction. Yom Trua there's only a mitzvah of shofar during the week, and Zichron Trua is telling me there is no mitzvah of shofar on Shabbos. So the Bavli asked on itself, that was the Bavli's original answer, but Mikdash Heika Takinan, if that's the case, how could you blow shofar in the Beis HaMikdash? So hence, the Gemara basically, the Bavli rejects this answer of the Yerushalmi, of the Havamina, and basically they conclude, you're right. Really, Yom Trua and Zichron Trua refer ben b'chol, ben b'Shabbos. There is no distinction. It's not limited to one's during the week, one's on Shabbos. They both equally apply ben b'chol, ben b'Shabbos. So if that's the case, then how come Avaloma Medina? Then how come we don't blow shofar on Shabbos? If Yom Trua applies to Shabbos, just as much as on Thursday, so how come we don't blow shofar on Shabbos? So that's what the Gemara tells us, Gzeira de Rabba. Rabba made a Gzeira in a couple of places. This is one. No shofar on Shabbos, no lulav on Yom Rishon, and Purim, which is less of an issue. Because today, the way our calendar is set up, we can't have Purim on Shabbos. In Yerushalayim, maybe they could have, but we can't. And either way, the Rabba made a Gzeira, Shema Yelech Eitzel Baki, Velomod. You're going to go to an expert and try to learn how to blow. And it's not that blowing the shofar is necessarily a malacha, that's a discussion. But it's the carrying, you're going to come to carry Dalet Amas per Rishus HaRabim. Why did Gemara focus on Rishus HaRabim and not from Rishus? That's a separate share. But that we won't go into tonight. But in terms of, the Gemara says that the concern is to prevent Chilul Shabbos, so therefore we say no shofar today. So it comes at a fundamental machlokes, the Yerushalmi and Bavli. Everyone agrees to the conclusions that in B'mikdash they blow shofar even on Shabbos, Avaloma Medina. Everyone agrees to the facts, but there's a fundamental machlokes, why not? So according to the Yerushalmi, we don't blow shofar on Shabbos. Well, I decided I didn't blow shofar today. I did, but that doesn't count. That was last week. She has only a minhag of blowing shofar. But there's no mitzvah on Shabbos. Zichron Trua, like what kind of question is that? Of course we didn't blow shofar, and nor should I. And according to the Bavli, yeah, I should blow shofar. I have a biblical mitzvah to blow shofar. Why don't I Gzeira de Rabba? To the Achronim asked, so why not say Gzeira de Rabba b'mikdash? So that's what the Achronim answer, that Ein Shvus b'mikdash. Kohanim's reason, Kohanim are careful, Ein Shvus b'mikdash, we don't make rabbinic decrees in the Beis HaMikdash. So, therefore, the results are the same, but there's a fundamental machlokas, Yerushalmi and Bavli, if there is a mitzvah in theory to blow shofar on Shabbos. According to Yerushalmi, no, there's nothing to discuss. According to the Bavli, yes, there is, but the rabbi said, no. How do we know? Where do the rabbis get this power? Do you mean God tells me to do something and the rabbis tell me not to? I listen to the rabbis. I guess, of course, it depends which rabbis are telling you, but I don't mean rabbis like me. I mean the Beis Din Haggadah. But it goes like this. So that's what they quote them. We read a couple weeks ago, Parashat Shoftim, Lo sasar min hadavar asher yigiducha yamino small. That don't turn away from the rabbis. The pasuk says right and left. So Rashi quotes the famous Sifri. If they tell you right is left and left is right, even then you have to. But kol shechein, how much more so when they tell you right is right, and people have to hear the second part. They just focus on the first part. When they tell you right is right and left is left, and certainly. So it's interesting. Many people mislearn the Pshat and the Rashi. It seems if you just look at the Rashi, you mean rabbinic law is binding even in error. Like they're telling me to do the wrong thing, and I have to. In fact, that's the Ramban's kasha in Rashi. It can't mean that. It's the Mishnah in Krisis. That where Beis Din Haggadah makes a mistake, the Melech, you have to bring karbanos. So there is no policy in Judaism. You follow someone just because they said it, even if you know they're wrong. In fact, interesting. Rav Shechter always like saying over this Maisa. Herman Wouk, I guess, who wrote many books, but one of his famous books is the Cain Mutiny. And I guess Cain was the name of the ship. The mutiny happened on the ship, and basically, the yesod of the story was that once you're on the sea, captain's words, no matter, even if it's totally illogical, rational, you do kind of like when you get to customs, you just listen to whatever they have to say. But when you get to the captain, or same thing, a pilot on the airplane, that's it. So he says, I got the name of my book from the Rashi in Chumash. So one of the students in yeshiva raised his hand. I guess you never learned the Ramban. That's not what Rashi means. And he never changed his title of his book, by the way. But that's what he claimed. That's where he got the. That's where he got the not the title from, but the concept from that Rashi over there. No. So either way, so we don't assume that obviously what it means to say is, if you think right is left out, if you're a Talmud Chacham and you know that's a mistake, so you go in and you clarify the mistake. But if it means you don't know, you're a balabas or an Amaretz, and the rabbi said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I read it in the art scroll. When you think the rabbi is wrong, it's okay. You listen to the rabbi. But if you're a Talmud Chacham, it's not talk radio where everyone has all opinions are equal. It's like if someone wanted to give a shot on Shakespeare, like, okay, you have a PhD, and like if you want to, you have to earn the right to even have an opinion on what it means.
Right.
How much more so, when it comes to, the Torah as well, it's also that way. You have to, not all opinions are equal, and therefore, the fact that you think the rabbi is wrong, go research the topic better or go discuss it with him. So either way, that's the source. And in fact, the Rav Chanan Wasserman, in fact, has a famous pshat where he says, you know what the pasuk's referring to? What do you mean right is left, left is right? Exactly our topic here. He says the Gemara tells us in Yevamos, Yesh koach biyad chachamim la'akor dvar Torah b'shevei al tasya. That the chachamim have power, but it's limited power, and one of the limitations are they can't tell you to violate the Torah b'kum v'aseh. The example I always give is, if you're having a Mac attack, so therefore the base thing can't permit you to eat the cheeseburger or whatever the Mac attack is. But because that's b'kum v'aseh telling you to violate the Aveira. But to merely not perform a mitzvah, don't blow shofar today, don't shake lulav, that the rabbis do have the power to. So Rav Chanan Wasserman said that's what the pasuk's referring to here. The Torah says blow shofar. He's working with the Bavli, obviously. Mm-hmm. He's saying, the Torah is saying blow shofar, afilu b'Shabbos. Come along the rabbis and say no shofar today. So therefore, even when they tell you right is left and left is right, you still have to listen to them. And the Rambam in Hilchos Mamrim, he gives the philosophy behind the power of the Chachamim. Why do you listen to them? Again, even when they go, he gives us the mashal he gives is, let's say you're walking by and you see someone looks like a butcher. He has a knife and he's cutting off this person's leg. Oh, what a criminal! Let's go stop him. And you get closer, he's wearing his white garbs, his green garbs, whatever doctors wear these days, the surgeons. And obviously the guy has gangrene. He's basically physically is cutting off his leg, but he's actually saving his life by doing it. So he says that, so too, we don't realize the Chachamim have the big picture. And therefore it's true, this year, not this year, but if it was Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, it's true we would be lacking in the mitzvah of shofar this year. But in the big picture, the Tzura of Shabbos, V'shavu b'neishas Shabbos, he paraphrases the Gemara in Yuma, which says, better to machal Shabbos achas, Kadei lishmar Shabbos is harbe, same thing here. Better to have a Rosh Hashanah without a shofar than for the whole Surah of Judaism to get, messed over. And therefore it's part of the big picture. Again, it's even only Mizmam and Hazbana. There can't be permanent changes. It has to be clear, it's a temporary measure. It's a gzeira for a certain reason. So that's how they explain this issue in the Bavli. So
temporary, you mean that it doesn't happen every year?
It
happens in some years.
Right, so like the Rosh Hashanah doesn't fall out on Shabbos every.
They're not in Shofar
exactly.
Altogether.
For instance, that's the kasha of the Bach and others. Why don't we cancel shofar completely? Why? Gzeira shem yisakin kli shir. That we know we have a rabbinic decree that you don't play musical instruments because we're afraid it's gonna break and you're gonna fix it and violate it in the Raisa. Alright, so why don't we say it by shofar? So one answer is
you have lots of answers. The Rabbim, you won't be nirshal in a place where the Rabbim. Right?
But you're right. But some.
In other words, if you have a gzeira that exists, but you're doing the mitzvah b'Rabbim, then everybody will make sure that everybody else that it should.
That's what they discussed by Milah on Shabbos. Yeah.
Milah's one, like eating before Shabbos, before
Right,
before
or going
Musaf,
to going to sleep. Right.
Right.
It's a general right. That's some point out right. Others point that it's not a kasha. They assume it's not a musical instrument. But let's just assuming it is a musical instrument. So that's what the answer is. The limitation of the power of the chachamim. Because if you would apply the principle Shem Yisak and Kli Shir, goodbye shofar. Oker the mitzvah shofar lagamri. That's one of the limitations the chachamim have, or have that don't have, is the chachamim can't oker a mitzvah lagamri. And therefore, if you said Shem Yisakim by Shabbos, it's only happening once in a while. And also, you have 2 days. When you only had 1 day, we could discuss, but we have 2 days now, and therefore, and even then, it was only for that year. It doesn't come out on the calendar, every time on Shabbos. So therefore, that's what they pointed. It has to be for a limited amount. So one shave al tasa is one of the limitations. They can't do it with kumvase. And another one is that it has to be also. It can't be something that's going to occur the mitzvah gamri. A third thing, which is on the same topic, is so how come we have Milah on Shabbos then? Why didn't Rabbi fell asleep from Milah? He only knew about lulav, shofar, and Megillah. What about Milah on Shabbos? Why don't we say Gzeira de Rabba? We're afraid it's gonna cause Chilul Shabbos, and let's wait for Sunday. So many different answers. Some point out along those lines that a Milah, you're the only other people come, they'll stop you from doing it. Others point out because Milah is one of the few mitzvahs aseh sheyesh bo kares, and we see from different places that aseh sheyesh bo kares has a different standing. It's a tosis and kedushin. Perhaps a woman would be chayev in a mitzvah aseh. Like that's what the Gemara in kedushin gaf tes. You need the pasuk also below also. What do you mean? It's a zman grama. I might have thought since it's a zman grama, so we find many times that kares plays a role, and therefore over here we don't want to stop you from doing something, even delay you a moment, in order to we don't want you to be in danger of being chayav kares. Others point out there's a famous taz along the lines we're talking about in terms of another limitation to the powers of the chachamim. He says, so there's a famous taz and others who point out that the Torah tells us ubiyom hashmini. It doesn't, and the Gemara says ubiyom afil b'Shabbos, but he learns that Yud Gimel Midas is considered like Mefurish Bakra apparently, because that's what he says. He says that since it's the Taz and others, but the Taz has it, and he says something which is Mefurish Bakra, Chachamim can't change. So if it would have said in the Torah, when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we blow shofar, even if it happened once in a while, that's it. You can't touch it, even shave out tasa. So he says, since it's kamat mefurish bekra ubiyom afil b'Shabbos, hence we can't stop them from doing milah. So another limitation of the power of losasor, we saw it's only shave out tasa, only temporary. They can't go against something which is a mefurish bekra. But either way, but nevertheless, the Chachamim told us not to blow shofar Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. And Lamaisa, we do as a separate discussion, I'm not going into now, which is a difficult issue in terms of, usually we only set gezeiras at a milsa de shchicha. Was it shchiach during that time that you had like 600,000 people, or whatever the definition of a Rishus HaRabim was, that was it so shchiach? That's a discussion. They deal with not, the answers aren't that great to the question, but they discuss that question of making a gzeira on something which, unless you want to say the kash is the terrorist, it was shchiach. But either way, that's something, for another time as well. But that's a difficult question they raise over there in the Gemara. So it comes out, it's a fundamental machlokes, Yerushalmi and Bavli. Everyone agrees to the facts, no shofar on Shabbos. In the Medina, yes, in the Mikdash. But according to Yerushalmi, because it's Zichron Trua, and according to the Bavli, Gzeira de Rabba, my nafkamina. Who cares what the reason is? Who cares based on Yerushalmi and the Bavli? Bottom line is, I know this. When Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, I'm not going to blow shofar. So what do I care about.
It comes out, one is a Doraisa and one is a Drabana.
Right. No. So obviously, it's a rhetorical question. There will be nafkaminas, but
Right.
yeah. So obviously, we'll get to some nafkaminas right now. So number one is they point out is to this one's very practical. Halacha l'maisa. This one will probably impact us the most. So we know if you look in your, I know it's a little early, but we have a couple of Bali Tefillah, so they probably looked at the mags already. At least I hope. Now, I'm not davening here, it's okay. But they probably noticed that in the Magzor, so even though we don't pass in like the Yerushalmi's distinction between Zikr and Trua, interesting enough, it's clearly not rejected Lagamri, because in the Tefillah we make this distinction. It says when Rosh Hashanah falls out during the week, you say the words Yom Trua, and when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, Zikron Trua. So it actually follows the Yerushalmi in that sense. So the question is, what happens if this coming year on Thursday, instead of saying the words Yom Trua, you inserted the word Zikron Trua, and you finish, and then you realize that after you finish, say Musaf Rosh Hashanah, the longest davening of the year. So whether that takes you 45 seconds or 45 minutes, that depends on you. But the longest davening of the year, so do I have to go back? I realized afterwards, I can't believe it. I didn't read, I said Zichron Trua instead of Yom Trua. So, according to Yerushalmi, it could be problematic, because we have a principle called Mishana Mimabeya Shel Chachamim. One who changes the format of the Chachamim, it's a problem. So perhaps according to the Yerushalmi, one could argue that it's like davening the wrong tefillah. Zikron Trua has nothing to do with today. You're davening a tefillah that has to do with Rosh Hashanah Shachol B'Shabbos, and hence you have to go back and repeat Shmona Esrei. But according to the Bavli, as we pointed out, both Yom Trua and Zikron Trua apply equally, ben B'Chol, ben B'Shabbos. So according to the Bavli, it would not be an issue. And luckily for us, we pass like the Bavli, that if one made the mistake in either direction and said Zechron Trua instead of Yom Trua.
I understand that as a Mabeh of Tefillah. I mean, the Chazal said it's B'chol, it's Yom Trua and Shabbos, whatever reason it is, even if it's only, unless you want to say that they or how was it that before Gzeir de Rabba, what did they do? So Shami would assume that they said, you know, Zichron Trua in the time of Hillel or whatever. But what did they do before the Gzera?
You mean according to the Bavli?
Yeah, according to the Bavli. Unless it's saying basically you can say Zichron Trua or Trua,
right,
and switch back and
so that's what the Bavli did. But even right, Gzeir de Rabba didn't change anything, because that's the whole. That's why we're saying it's not a problem. Right, it makes sense anyway to do Yom Trua. I think it makes sense that they would do Yom Trua during the week, Zichron Trua and Shabbos. We're just pointing out the evidence of one, because according to the Bavli, there's no reason, even before Gzeir de Rabba, it still doesn't fundamentally. No, right. I'm saying even though they both apply to both, but if you have to pick one, you know, Yom Trua, you know, you could say, make like in terms of the argument of the Yerushalmi, Yom Trua seems to fit more into the day when you're blowing at the shofar. Well, Zichron, right?
Rabba, they were blowing on Shabbos.
Right. I'm saying, right. So, right, they're even blowing on Shabbos, right? So maybe there's both of them, or yeah. But I guess according to the Bavli, it's not really an issue, because whatever they instituted,
Almost like they could say either or.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It could have been, right, it would be, right. I guess it's an interesting historical shaila, yeah.
What makes you think that that phraseology is like Yeshtola Kahun?
No, right, exactly.
You don't know that, you know.
No, exactly. No,
how does the Rambam bring it down? In his quote Mafsir, he has a tefillah for Rosh Hashanah. Does he say was he Zichron Trua or Yom Trua? I don't know offhand. But I don't know.
You're right. No, they have
same thing like the Goinim. I don't know if they had of high Goinim or various Goinim, but they're
100%. No, I agree. Achronim raised that issue. That within the Yerushalmi, then it's not that it wouldn't be good. It's a Shiloh. Is that something likuva or not? Because a lot of the stuff we say on. A lot of the stuff is just the piyutim and the pismon. Like people get caught. A lot of people get caught up slichas, where they forget the ikar is the yud gimel midas and not all the other things. And they get caught up in v'chein tein pachtecha. You know, you skip the whole thing. You go, if it's a good mistake to make, go right to Amelach HaKadosh and keep on going. I'm just saying is, people, you know, that's as human. We're in Western society, things that come up once in a while are more chashav, not necessarily in Jew. So therefore, you know, that stuff we're not saying. That's the important, which is really not true in terms of the piyutim and that. But you're right, it's not clear according to Yerushalmi. But they're saying, according to Yerushalmi, if it is a likuva, then there would be a problem. But according to the Bavli, it wouldn't be a problem, no matter what, because each one is appropriate to the day right. Another interesting potential nafkamina that could come up. This one's really more nogeya for Sephardim than Ashkenaz, but it goes along these lines. We know we make a shechiyanu, the different types of shechiyanus. We make a shechiyanu on the Kedushas Hayom, and we make a shechiyanu on a mitzvah that comes mizman lizman. So we make a shechiyanu on the one we make Rosh Hashanah night, that's something else. The one we make on Shofar in the morning, that's on the mitzvah of Shofar. So the minik Ashkenaz is, when do we make a shechiyanu? We make a shechiyanu on both days. Whatever the reason is, it's a whole similar, whether it's the same machlokas Machaber Ramah and Tosas Ramah by Megillah as well, that we make the shechiyanu at night as well as the morning. Whether it's connected or different, that's a separate discussion. But the bottom line is we make shechiyanu both days. The minig against Sfard, of course I always get into trouble, Sfard, because I didn't think someone come along and say, what are you talking about? I'm Sephardi, we make too. So the minig Sfard brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, or the classical minig Sfard, that they only make one shechiyanu. So they make it the first day and that's it. So here's the following shaila. It's Rosh Hashanah Shechol b'Shabbos, and either they forget it's Shabbos, they forget that they're not supposed to blow, they never heard Xer the Rabbi, whatever the issue might be. The shul goes ahead, they make the brachas, they make the shechiyanu, and they blow their 100 blasts, or maybe after 30 they got cut off. They realized, wait, it's Shabbos, we don't blow shofar, but at least I got the 30 in. So the question is, okay, so now comes the next day, it's Sunday, and they're blowing shofar for the first time or perhaps the second time. So the shaila is, according to Ashkenaz, it doesn't make a difference because you're making a shechiyanu anyway. But according to Sephardim, would you make a shechiyanu the second day of Yontif or Rosh Hashanah if you inadvertently blew shofar on the first day? So therefore this could also be totally on this machlokas Bavli and Yerushalmi. According to Yerushalmi, then it should be a no-brainer. There is no mitzvah period on shofar, bracha l'batalas or sheina tzricha, whatever you want. It's a meaningless activity. It's like blowing shofar this Shabbos. Zichron trua, there is no mitzvah of shofar, so I don't know what you're doing. And of course, it's the first time you are doing the mitzvah, go ahead and of course make your shechiyanu. However, according to the Bavli, one can entertain the shaila because minat Torah, we have a chiyuv to blow shofar on Shabbos. It's only a Xer d'Rabba not to. So it gets down to a fundamental question, again, of how much power do these rabbis have. So when we say they can oker dvar mitzvah b'shei v'al taseh, how far does that go? Does it mean that they could say, you know what? The mitzvah of shofar no longer exists anymore. I'm telling you, no shofar, we're afraid of Chil Shabbos. Sorry, no longer a mitzvah of shofar doesn't exist. Or no, they don't have that kind of power. Let's not kid ourselves. It's only on the Gavra. It's only on, they could tell me I should not blow shofar on Shabbos, but to tell me that there is no mitzvah of shofar, that they don't have the power to. That's a major shaila among the Rishonim in terms of, as Rabbi Kiva Eger raises that shaila, if someone goes ahead and blows shofar on Shabbos, is there any kiyum? In fact, there was a famous shaila 150 years ago in Yerushalayim, where I'm talking about big Talmud Chacham in Yerushalayim, and apparently, I'm not sure why it was a 1 year thing, maybe...
He never really blew it.
Right. At the end what happened, you know, all the... They say maybe he did it privately in his home or something, yeah. But So
Let him do it.
I guess in Yerushalayim they have all those signs they put up with all the mudas. So come to my shul. You can, I guess it's a kul or a chumrah depending how you look at it. But basically, it was a big to do when a big tumult broke out because this rabbi he wanted to blow shofar on Shabbos. Why? Either because the Rambam he was in the old city, so it still is the mikdash, and even if not, as you pointed out, the Rif learns that the institution was that perhaps in front of Beis Din, now once the Chana went to Yavne, so it's not just limited to there. He had his own cheshbonos.
And it was 2 years in a row.
What?
2 years in a row.
Yeah, he had his own cheshbonos. The Gedolim apparently didn't go for it, but the shiloh was, if I have, tickets when were double in that shul that year, the question was, should I go? I can't blow shofar. But if someone's going to be blowing shofar, is it totally a negative or neutral, or is there some form of kiyum that there is? That was the whole discussion. Rabbi Eger raised the shaila years ago whether someone blew shofar on Shabbos, a bishogeg or whatever, is there some type of kiyum? So he quotes as the machlokas rishonim seems to be in Sukkah regarding a similar issue. Tosas and the Ran, I believe, in the beginning of Sukkah, the machlokas Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. And one of these Tosas points out one of the exceptions to what we pass like Beis Shammai. The case is where you're eating in the sukkah outside. The sukkah is fine, 100% kosher min Torah, but the table is outside and outside the sukkah. And whether it's outside in the garage, outside, it's not in the sukkah. So the shaila is, so min Torah, the sukkah is fine. But the rabbi said, I can't eat in a sukkah where the table is outside because the rabbis know the power of food. You can end up where the food is. We all know that. And therefore they said, you can't, so the shaila is, what happens if one did? If one ate in the sukkah, but the table was outside. So there's a lashon, I think, of Beis Shammai or the Gemara. Well, kiyamta mitzvah sukkah kol chayecha. He has never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah his whole life. So he says. So then the Tosas over there. There seems to be a machlokas Tosas in Iran. How far you take that? Does it mean literally? Well, kiyamta mitzvah sukkah. Oh no, that he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah properly, but to say he hasn't got a kiyam mitzvah, so that seems to be a machlokas rishonim. So Rabbi Eger says it seems to be the same issue here. Is there any kiyam ha-mitzvah to hear the shofar on Shabbat? So if there is a kiyam ha-mitzvah, so then according to the Sfarim that would be a shaila in terms of making another shachiyanu on the second day. It would depend on this issue if you actually had a kiyam ha-mitzvah of shofar when it fell out on Shabbos. So then for the second day, according to the Sfarim, then you wouldn't necessarily make a shach. You wouldn't meaning if you got the mitzvah, you certainly wouldn't. But I'm saying is, if you didn't get the mitzvah, so then you'd have to make a shachiyanu on that Sunday. Yeah, that Sunday is what you had a question, or
but I know there's questions where there's habahatalia in those two things, right?
Which
between sukkah and
right. So then there's this right. So it's Svi Pesach Frank in the Mikrai Kodesh. There's notes on them. I don't know if they're from him himself or his grandson, but this touches on a fundamental question in terms of when you have a mitzvah min Torah and a mitzvah midrabanan, how does it work? Do they complement? Do they uproot? So the one whoever wrote the notes on the bio and the Har Tzvi, he wants to make a distinction between different mitzvahs. Perhaps, like we know, the rabbis told us, even though we know the mitzvah of Kiddush is min Torah bidvarim, and yet the Chazal instituted we should do it, over wine. That's the famous kasha on the Magen Avraham and the Rambam is, the Dagam or Ravav, if you fulfill Kiddush in shul, so how could you make it for your wife at home? So there are many answers, but some say, they touch on this shaila. Once the Chachamim told you to make Kiddush al yayin, are you yotzi the Kiddush? That's one of the answers. I think the Pri Megadim. But so it gets into a question like when did the mitzvah d'Rabbanan complement and when not? So I want to make a distinction.
So even if I ignore the the machlokes between the Bavli and Rishomi, I'm still stuck. Kol mokum shover rabbanan lo asasa yasaloi mahani or not. That now becomes an override. That seems to be more superior or overtakes the machlokes between the Rishomi and the Bavli.
Right.
The face is like mahani.
Right. No. Right.
It's not important which Svar you hold like.
100% right.
So I don't know why the question from Sukkos or for the question from the Sukkot was the other one from Shofar. Is that the same issue, or is Lo Mahani question? Over and above that.
No. Obviously the assumption is going to be that it is Mahani, and then it's a question of Mahani. But once it's Mahani, so then it's a Shah. You're right. But that's what right. So sometimes I want to say about the Sukkah case that's true, but the Shofar that was only on the Gavra. Like that might have been a question on the Chefsa of this. It's no longer considered the Chefsa of a Sukkah, and therefore maybe that case you never said in the Sukkah. But Shofar is more on the Gavra, not on. They didn't have the. So they make that distinction between Sukkah and Shofar. That it could depend on what mitzvah we're talking about in terms of how far went with the Chacham and whether it's Oker or Lagamre or it's just a did in the Gavra.
Because I think there's also the question of that he says the Kiyamtim mitzvahs for Sukkah, but the never said the Avera of eating outside of the Sukkah. In other words, if they, there's a side that they were Makayim the mitzvah, and there's the other side that if you eat like that, you do an Avera of eating outside of the Sukkah. So it seems to be that it may serve as a Sukkah.
Right, you're right. That's the Minchas Chinuch raises that shaila. In terms of we know there's a mitzvah to eat inside the sukkah. What about is there an isser to? We know there's a mitzvah to eat in the sukkah. Is there an isser to eat outside the sukkah? I think Rabbi Yehuda over there has a sukkah in the Gemara. So my nafkamina, the Minchas Chinuch says either I have to eat in the sukkah. So the Minchas Chinuch says the nafkamina is an onain. What does an onain do? Someone's an onain, let's say on Cholamai, whenever the person died, before the burial. The shaila is an onain eat in the sukkah or not? So we know, why should that be? Because we know the halakha is by an onain, that he's pater from mitzvahs aseh, but he still has to keep the los aseh, or the isser aseh. So therefore the shaila is, if there's a isser to eat chutz l'sukkah, so then he'll have to eat in the sukkah. But if there's no isser to eat chutz l'sukkah, he has to eat outside the sukkah. However, of course, he would not make a bracha, because that's the general. If we assume there was an isser to eat chutz l'sukkah and he has to eat in the sukkah, he still would not make a bracha, because we have a general principle. You only make a bracha when you're being makayim and mitzvah. Merely to avoid an isser, there's no bracha. That's why. So therefore, that's the Piskei Tshuva brings down by Yonin as well. The famous shai. What does he do when he wants to eat bread? You can't tell him he can't eat. Because on one hand, there's a mitzvah midrabanan to wash your hands before you eat bread. But there's an issur drabanan to eat bread without washing your hands. So out the mitzvah drabanan he's pater. But out the issur drabanan he's not. So what should he do? So the Piskei Tshuva says he should wash his hands without a bracha. So what kind of compromise is that? It's the same yisod. Out the mitzvahs aseh, he's exempt, so he's not doing it. But to avoid the issur d'Rabbanan of eating bread without washing your hands, so therefore you don't make a bracha. So therefore, that's the Minchas Chinuch. So right, so it ties into, it's a different shaila, but right, but that's a separate issue in terms of whether there's an issur aseh to eat chutz l'sukkah, or not, or is this failure? Is this being mavato mitzvahs aseh, but not eating in the sukkah? Right. Just to summarize, so we're discussing we discussed the issue of how many kolos. Min Torah at 9, it got to 30. Machlokes Rama and Rav Haigon, whether if you only did 9, so we assume at least 30, and then the mina got to 100, and then we got into the Machlokes Yerushalmi Bavli in terms of what's the pshat, the mikdash how you talking about over Medina. The Yerushalmi says Yom Trua and Zichron Trua are two separate psukim, and therefore one's b'chol, one's b'shabbos. The Bavli says, no, they're both ben b'chol, ben b'Shabbos. It's only a din d'Rabbanan, gzeira d'Rabba. Then therefore we said based on Mosasim Radavar, so you get a no small Rabbi Chanan, right is left, that's telling you the Torah says both show for the rabbis say no. And the Rambam in terms of the philosophy, like gangrene, that Mechachil Benet Mechal Shabbos Achas, they Lishmar Shabbos is Harbe, so too no show for this year, but we keep the Surah of Judaism going. So we said bottom line is my nafkamina Yerushalmi Bavli. Either way, we're not going to blow shofar on Shabbos, but Medina. So we said, perhaps one is if you mix up Zikron Trua Yom Trua. According to the Bavli, there's nothing to talk about. According to Yerushalmi, perhaps or perhaps not, depending how integral Zikron Trua and Yom Trua is to the davening. If we assume that Zikron Trua and Yom Trua is essential, so then you get into the problem of Mashanam Abei Shel Chachamim. And the other issue we discussed was the Shechiyanu for Sfardim, if someone blew shofar on Shabbos, so it gets into whether they would make a Shechiyanu on the second day. It gets into when the Chachamim are Okir Dvar Torah, how much power do they have? Do they uproot the mitzvah Lagamre or not? The Rabbi Akiva Eger seems it's only the Gavra, and therefore there is this partial Kia, maybe Sukkah, and other mitzvahs are different. And we went into as well, Zera Derabba, why not by Mila, and the different limitations of Chachamim, only Shevi Al Taseh, only temporary, and they can't do things that are Mefurish Bakra. What we didn't get to, what maybe we'll do next week is, so according to Yerushalmi, we explained why we need two psukim, Yom Trua and Zikron Trua. One's talking about Bechol, one's talking about Shabbos. But according to the Bavli, what do you need both psukim for? What do we need both Yom Trua and what do you need Zikron? Rav Soloveitchik gave a 6-hour share on this. I think I could do it in 5 hours, so come a little early next week. And maybe we'll discuss that next week.